Hey folks, I'm back, Iron Rob. Today I want to talk to you about this little product here. This is something I purchased, 5-6 years ago. The Dunlop DC Brick. It's no longer available. They've replaced it. They've got it under the MXR brand. They've got a new, better, improved, I'd like to call it maybe fixed, power supply. I want to talk about this thing and why I'm not so fond of it. There's a lot of them for sale. People are trying to dump these things. Well, let's talk about how this thing's built to begin with. First of all, we start off with this, it's a wall wart. It's not more than a wall wart. Takes your 120 volts, converts it to DC. So there's a transformer in there. There's probably a little bridge rectifier, a capacitor. I don't think it's regulated or anything like that. I don't see it. They basically tell you, they guarantee an output of 18 volts, 150 milliamps or so. That would give you about 2.7 V8. It's about 2.7 watts. That's what comes out of this thing, 2.7 watts. And if you actually measure the output, I measured this one and I got 17.8 volts DC. So this is, basically what you're doing is you're feeding this little device now with 17.8 volts DC. And from there, what it should provide you with are 3 18-volt outputs and 7 or so 9-volt outputs. Now, you're not going to get more than, about 2.7 watts out of it. Actually, you get less than that because once you calculate inefficiencies and stuff like this, you might be down to maybe 2.5 watts. So if you look at, your guitar pedals, which will consume anything from 20 milliamps to 120 milliamps, if you average it out, you say maybe 50 milliamps a pedal, you're looking at, if you're drawing 50 milliamps per pedal, you're good for about 6 pedals with something like this. Not much more. Now, if you take a look inside of this thing, I just have this thing already kind of disassembled. And here's your circuit board. Essentially what goes on is the 17.8 comes in on this input connector. The 18 volts that you've got out here is essentially what comes out of this wall wart. So when you're hooking up, 18 volt pedals, you are essentially hooking up straight to this thing. There's not much electronics between this and the output, except for a couple of capacitors, a couple of resistors. That's about all you've got for filtering. They all share a common DC bus. As far as the 9 volts is concerned, we get the 9 volts. They achieve that with a switching regulator. This is a max 830. There's like a max 831, 832. This one's the adjustable one. And they've got this thing adjusted for 9 volts. And basically it feeds your 7 9-volt outputs. These are not independent. All right. And the problem we've had with this thing is it's noisy. And the reason it's noisy is because the outputs are not independent of each other. They share the same DC rail. So if you get noise in one pedal, it can easily travel down the chain through the power supply. This is not a good thing. This is not what I would consider superior design. You could, you get a college kid to build one of these things, probably, gets in a class at 8:30 by 10:30, coffee break. College student's done designing this thing. This is not sophisticated. And, I paid about $120 for this thing. I was expecting something that wasn't going to give me any problems. As it turns out, this is probably good. I don't know. I'll give it to some kid, who's got a little bedroom amp and a few pedals. This is not something I think Joe Bonamassa is going to be putting on his pedal board anytime soon. Frankly, I'm disappointed with the product. It gives you 9 volts and it gives you 18 volts, but it gives you a little more than that, a little more than what you want. A lot of noise. So when you're shopping for a power supply, you want to make sure that the outputs are independent. I'm probably going to build my own. The next one, I'm going to probably put it together. I'm going to buy my own regulators. I'll have separate regulators for each output. And I'm not going to be using any of these Chinese wall warts. It's like a $5 thing. Whatever. There are better products out there. And as far as I'm concerned, they are overpriced. I mean, there's this, building power supplies, man. It's one of the first things you learn when you're learning electronics, and this is about as cheap and dirty as you can build them. And I guess it's one of those things out of a lot of engineering schools. Like they just get something out there, and that's what they did. They just got something out there. This thing could have been built a lot better. And honestly, I really wouldn't have minded paying an extra $50 for something that I could have kept and that would have done the job. This is now a throwaway item. Like I said, you go on eBay, you go on Reverb, you go on any of those sites, and people are trying to dump these things. That's why they're noisy. Anyway, when you're shopping for a power supply, you want independent channels, and it's going to save you a lot of grief. You won't have to replace it. Most of them all have short circuit protection because regulators that they put in there to isolate all have that built in. So, as far as like things like sagging resistors, those are just gimmicks, man. Okay, it's just gimmicks. Get a power supply that can at least give you solid 9 volts. And if you need anything else, I know some guys are using line 6 stuff, so they need an AC power. They need, there's things like that. You can buy these supplies that have more sophisticated little gimmicks like that. But you can find something that's 9 volts, independent channels. You'll be way ahead of the game. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this. Talk to you later.